what would you say is more important between pure science, the branch that deals with only theories, and applied science, like medical doctor, engineering, something like that? What would you say is more important?
It's hard to say that one is more important than the next. I think certainly, I think bioengineering and these are very closely related to medical applications, and I think we would all agree that something, for instance, which will allow someone that is blind to at some level see, that's an important thing.
So what you're saying is that they help each other, they support between each other?
Oh, absolutely. I would not say that all science is done with the expectation of producing new ways for blind people or for deaf people or whatever to hear or see. But in fact, there is, I think, people that are straddling the border between applied medical applications for science and those that in fact are developing the new technologies to probe nature. And I think that it is wonderful when those two purposes come together and in fact you do something which such as allowing blind people to, quote, see. Of course, they're not seeing, but they get a very good idea of what's going on around them and stuff like that. When I was an undergraduate at Caltech, I actually was dating a blind girl. So I know a little bit about that. Actually, she was one of identical twins. And back when I was born and she was born, so just around the end of World War II, when usually if you had a multiple birth, such as identical twins, the babies would be put in an oxygen tent. And if you don't regulate the percent oxygen carefully, in fact, you would probably blind the infants. And that's what happened to both of these girls. Because they just weren't ready for that. So it's very medical applications of science are complicated, I think, and we certainly learn from our mistakes. But I think that some of those mistakes leave people blind or deaf, etc., etc.
Thank you very much, Professor. And can I have one extra question? From a scientist, do you really think that the world is gonna end something?
笑死我了. I laugh myself to death. No, I don't think that the world is going to end in another week or another year. Or let's face it, the world has been around for billions of years, and I see no reason to suspect that in fact it won't be around for billions of more years. Now, that said, I think that human beings, by the activities that we do, I mean, in particular, I think burning fossil fuels is having a very profound impact on our planet. And I don't think that is going to make the planet go away, but in fact, it certainly has the possibility of impacting a lot of species may disappear as a result of our changing their habitats. Of course, if you put a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere, then it's much more difficult for the infrared radiation to leave the planet, and that's part of global warming. So, I think we, as I like to think that we are occupants of this planet, but we don't own it. And I think we have a responsibility, not just to ourselves or to the planet, but to the future generations, which certainly don't want to inherit a dead planet. So yeah, you've brought up something very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
That's cheating.
Well,
No.
well, he's well prepared.
I'm a student who is interested in studying physics, but unfortunately, I always fail in any test. How do you think about this way for solving this problem?
So,
That's tough. I have to say that I think I've kind of been in love with Mother Nature in some sense. Ever since I was probably 6 years old, and I think I became even irrespective of the science that I learned in school. In fact, I think I learned more science probably through middle school anyway, on my own than I did from the classes I took. So I think the thing that makes you a good scientist is curiosity and a love for the subject. And the last thing that is likely to make you a good scientist is the fear of failing an exam. So I think what you need to do is just do reading on your own. I mean, certainly there were a bunch of kids and myself that we formed kind of a loose club, and we would talk a lot about science, mainly physics. But I think you're really you learn faster and better if you ask the questions rather than if someone else asks the questions. And so I think to become a good scientist, you start asking yourself questions. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, as you mentioned lastly about the curiosity, I would just like to ask that Thai students tend to be taught to cram things in their head rather than participating in discussions and volunteering. So that's why it's less productive to produce scientists in Thailand. What are some methods to induce young scientists or young Thai students, especially the schoolings, to the term curiosity and inducing them to curiosity?
Yeah,
Thank
well,
you.
You're asking a very good question, and I think it takes a strategy of posing a question to students. I personally, think that the best learning I've ever had at before I got to Caltech was probably in my chemistry class, where in fact we would be small groups, and the teacher would ask some question, and we would argue amongst each other until we felt we understood what the answer to the question was. Of course, sometimes we weren't right, but in fact, I think this business about being self-motivated and being in a small group of where you're motivated by your peers rather than being motivated by the fear of getting a bad grade in class. I mean, that's of course. It's an effective technique, but in fact, I don't think it's as valuable as self-motivation is.
Before you got the Nobel Prize, have you ever known that the thing that you think can possibly to change the world?
Well, I don't know that anything I've done has really changed the world, but I do things mainly because I enjoy doing them and because I'm good at it. The things I'm not good at, I don't do. So I dare say I took art lessons when I was young, and I was terrible. And so I had this choice. I could either take swimming lessons or art lessons, and that was a very easy choice for me to make, because it was the art lessons. I was very bad at art, And so, you know, I think, you know, we're all, each of us is the manager of our own human resources. And I think you have to know what motivates you to begin with, what those things are that you are good at, because they're usually the same things that you enjoy doing. And you know, and then go from there. But I think that's the worst thing to do is to hammer your head against a rock, expecting the rock is going to crack, because it's your head that's going to crack first. So what you really need to do is understand who you are, what motivates you, what you enjoy doing the most, and then find out how you can use these very powerful and very positive emotions to do something that might in fact be useful for other people besides yourself. So thank you very much.
Have you ever seen the movie named A Beautiful Mind? Yeah, it is about John Nash life,
yes.
and that movie show how the curiosity of him to mathematics, how strong of your passion of his passion to mathematics. So I wonder that in your mind, yeah, is your mind like John Nash is your oh, I'm sorry, and that doesn't mean that I'm just want to know that how strong passion that how strong of your passion to physics, how deep curiosity you have to physics.
Yeah, well, that's a complicated question. I think, well, first of all, John Nash was, I think, primarily a very good mathematical economist, and that's not something that I'm likely to do. But you know, so there's a lot of difference between us. But and of course, Nash had all sorts of other problems which he overcame, you know, really quite remarkably, and ultimately, I think, ended up contributing in important ways to mankind. Now, I don't know whether I've done that, okay, but I try. I think that we, you know, what's true is that we're not all going to all of a sudden come up with some brilliant idea which is going to change the future of mankind. That's unlikely to happen. But I think, you know, what you can do, first of all, I think, you know, you want, I think we all need to be needed, and you want to do something which will benefit not just yourself, but your friends, and basically mankind. And so I think as you're going through school, you know, you can see those areas, the big questions, and you can say, is this something that I can contribute to, and something which I can enjoy doing. And you know, I think for all of us, we all would like to think of ourselves as contributing, and in ways which are non-trivial and possibly important. And I think it's really worthwhile to look inside yourself to understand what your motivations are, what your emotions are, because it's funny, we all think that emotions are not very good things. They don't have anything to do with science, but in fact they do. Because it's emotions that drive us to do the things that we do. We asking nature the very difficult questions. That's an emotion drives you to do that. And so I think those people that end up being most successful in science are the people that start out knowing a lot about themselves, what motivates them, and what allows them to succeed even in the face of failure, because that happens to us a lot. So, good question. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm Vacharapon. I'm a mom of this little boy. We take him out of the school since grade 3 because we have learned that he is he has multiple abilities. He's also good in violin, in painting, and best of all, he's motivated himself for science. Right now, he developed his science ability very high. But my point as a mom and conducting homeschool, what I would like to ask you is there anything that we have to worry about? Because it seems that he learned a lot by himself. And is there any consequence? Because he's not in the schooling system. So is there any chance that the way that he learn is the jumping from one thing to the other, or the subject is not followed by the curriculum? Is there any chance that we will miss anything along the way, or anything that we should be aware of in order to support him, and then he can make all the biology, he loves all the biology, physics and chemistry, but he still cannot decide which one he loves best in order to go like that. Is there any chance or anything that we should think about in order to make him be successful as a scientist in the future?
Yeah, that you're asking a set of very complicated questions, of course. I think that first of all, when I was junior high school, middle school, or something like that, I had a set of friends, and we tended to, we were the science geeks. I don't know if that's a word that means anything here, but I mean, we were the kind of the sort of people that were more interested in science, I suppose, than in girls. There you can see where we are. But I think we were, because I think it is very important that we all develop good interpersonal skills. That we can interact with people effectively and positively, and I think my personal feeling is that I'm happy that I had these friends in school, because in fact that I think allowed me to develop these interpersonal skills. And I don't know if that's an important issue for you.
In terms of the social life, I don't worry much about him because he is very sociable. He go everywhere and can make friends easily.
That's good.
But my point is the way he study, because it's not by the curriculum, not the step by step.
Okay.
But he learned so many things by himself, and so what I'm worried whether the way he process, the way of thinking, is there anything that I have to worry about the consequence in order that he know have the good foundation in order to develop up into the complicated things in the future?
Yeah, I mean certainly I think it doesn't hurt anyone to have a mentor. So where someone who's looking over your shoulder and seeing whether you're doing things going in productive direction or not. And so I think certainly in when I was in high school, I had people, teachers that I think fulfilled that role for me quite effectively. I don't know, it's tricky. My father actually was quite interested in science, and so he sort of would bring things home. I would say I am lucky to have survived my childhood, but I think it does help. I think having if you have a really good teacher who can understand the passions of young students. And also the needs. So, and I don't know whether public school is well equipped to provide those essentials, which a student who's very bright and maybe well ahead of the rest of the class. So. The answer is, I would think that a good teacher is a good friend.
Good morning. Is it the same question? I'm the dad of this boy. Besides from the science curriculum, in the normal curriculum. He have finished it all by himself, read it through, and then after that we connect right to Mahidol University and to send him to enter the laboratory with some mentors, graduate students, and then he also joined the class in Mahidol University. I wonder whether this is the correct way to have the productive output, because it jumped too fast or not.
Yeah. Oh, well, this is the classic conundrum now that you are afraid that the student will learn too fast and maybe end up with gaps in the education or something like that, or you know, look, I think that smart people, smart children, have a lot more flexibility and capability than we give them credit for, particularly when it's, I think, things that we don't control, the way they think about things and stuff like that. But I think in general, it's probably more important to expose bright children to interesting ways of thinking about things rather than worrying that they need to learn everything as everyone else is learning it. I think that's a mistake. So maybe we can talk at some later time about
Thank
this.
you, Professor.
Someone tells me that physics is king of science. How about your opinion?
Well, I think physics is actually king of science. Look, I think for me, physics has been spectacular. I enjoy physics very, very much. I like to think about it rather deeply. But you know, I think we're all different, okay? And I think there are a lot of people that would claim that biology is more fascinating and more interesting and more relevant. And you know, it really depends on who you are and what your interests are. So I think physics actually has a lot to contribute to the other sciences. So for instance, a lot of NMR was developed by physicists, but in fact it's used for biomedical applications all the time now. And so I don't know, I think there is some physics, I think, in almost everything that we do. And you know, I like to think that physics is important for that reason. But you know, if you talk about, and I dare say, if you look at chemistry, if you look at chemical processes, it's really not very different from complex systems thought of from a physics perspective. You can essentially do that. So I think physics is important, but if you look at these other sciences, I think chemistry ends up being, I think, the way chemists think about their subject is I think much more effective than if you start from the beginning and think about it as from the physics perspective. And then of course you have biology, and I don't know if you want to worry about, I think now, I'm certainly, I don't know about other people in this room right now, but I'm very concerned about the health of our planet. As you can tell, the atmosphere, the oceans, there's a lot of, the ecology has become a very important science. So I don't like to say that one science is more important than any other science. They're different, and I think if you're thinking about what science you would like to pursue a career in, then I think you have to know something about a whole bunch of different sciences and a lot about yourself before you make that decision.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
You know, I think the people that are most successful in science are those people that have a passion for understanding things and have a deep curiosity about how nature behaves.